The door slammed open with an abruptness that shattered the fragile calm like a gunshot. Dr. Marcus Hale entered first, his eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line, followed closely by Lena Voss, whose steely gaze scanned Claire like a predator sizing up its prey. Claire Bennett. Dr. Hale's voice was low, but carried an unmistakable authority. Or, should I say, Claire Matthews. Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. The name, the truth she had fought to bury beneath layers of deception, was laid bare in the spotlight. "You have no proof," she said, voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Oh, but we do," Hale replied, fingers tapping the tablet in his hand. "Your fabricated addiction, your secret communications, and your real identity. You're not a patient, you're an infiltrator." Memories of the months spent weaving her story through the silk-lined halls of the rehab rushed through her mind. Every whispered conversation, every stolen glance in shadowed corners, every calculated alliance had been leading to this moment, and now it was unraveling. Lena stepped forward, her voice cold as ice. "You're jeopardizing everything. The facility, the patients, our work. We cannot allow you to expose us." Claire stood slowly, meeting their gaze with unflinching steel. "The truth will come out, one way or another." Before they could respond, a commotion erupted in the grand lobby. Voices rose in alarm and confusion as Evan Cross, the charming ally Claire had trusted, strode forward, his expression unreadable. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evan announced, projecting his voice with practiced ease. "I think it's time we all knew exactly who Claire is and what she's been doing here." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd of elite patients and staff, the polished surface of civility cracking under the weight of betrayal. Eyes that once regarded Claire with cautious curiosity now burned with suspicion and fear. Claire's stomach tightened. Evan's treachery was a blade plunged deep into her mission. The fragile network of trust she had painstakingly built was collapsing. With the rehab's security now on high alert, alarms blared, echoing off the marble walls. Lena's figure appeared at the corridor's entrance, blocking Claire's path with a grim smile. "You can't run from this." But Claire moved with the desperation of a cornered animal, darting into the labyrinthine hallways that twisted like veins beneath the surface of the luxury estate. The scent of antiseptic, mixed with expensive colognes, filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. She could hear Lena's footsteps pounding behind her, relentless and unyielding. Pulse racing, Claire slipped through a hidden door, descending into the underground parking garage where the harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. There, in the cold, sterile expanse, she faced Dr. Hale one last time. His expression was a mask of contempt and calculation. "You overplayed your hand." Claire's voice was steady. "Maybe, but I'm not finished. Not yet." The standoff crackled with tension, a battle of wills beneath the glaring lights. The secrets of the rehab, the fate of her sister, and the cost of truth hung precariously in the balance. Outside, the storm that had been gathering since her arrival threatened to break, the controlled chaos beneath the silk finally ready to unravel, and Claire was ready to face whatever came next. The city's night skyline stretched behind the room like a glittering tapestry, the faint hum of distant traffic a reminder of the world outside this gilded cage. Inside, Dr. Vincent Hale stood waiting, his posture relaxed, the faintest smile playing on his lips, the smile of a man who believes himself untouchable. "Claire Hale," Hale greeted, his voice smooth and measured. "I was wondering when you'd show up." She met his gaze steadily, noting the cold grey eyes that missed nothing. "I'm here," she said simply, "to end this." Behind her, the door clicked shut. Evelyn Sharp, Hale's ever-watchful head of security, appeared silently, her presence a dark shadow. Her black tactical gear seemed almost out of place in this room of luxury, but her eyes were sharp, unyielding. She blocked Claire's retreat with a subtle shift, her stance warning that no one left without Hale's say. "So brave," Hale mused, stepping closer. "But bravery won't save you here. You don't understand the forces you're up against." Claire's lips pressed into a thin line as she reached into her jacket pocket, pulling out a small device. "I understand more than you think." With deliberate calm, she pressed play. The room filled with Hale's voice, recorded during a secret meeting she had infiltrated weeks before. His words spilled out, cold and unguarded, confessing the exploitation of patients, the manipulation for profit, the calculated cruelty masked by velvet words and luxury. Evelyn's eyes flickered with unease, but she remained silent. Marcus Lyle, the influential patient who had once wielded power like a king within these walls, stood rigid, his confident smile vanishing as the recording laid bare their dark empire. Hale's expression twisted from calm to fury, his facade cracking under the weight of his own revelations. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "You're nothing but a trespasser." "I'm the reckoning," Claire replied steadily, "and it's over." The tension in the room was palpable. A taut wire stretched to its breaking point. Marcus's shoulders slumped slightly. The undercurrent of power was shifting, the carefully maintained order fracturing. Evelyn's grip on the door loosened, her eyes narrowing but her stance less certain. Claire took a step forward, feeling the weight of every secret she'd uncovered, every betrayal endured. This was the final game, and she held the winning hand. "Where is she?" Claire demanded, voice low but fierce. "My sister, where is Sophie?" Hale's eyes flickered with something unreadable, a mixture of menace and reluctant respect. For a moment, silence stretched between them like a chasm. Then, with a cold smile, Hale spoke. "She's closer than you realize, but in this place, nothing is as it seems." Claire's heart pounded, the promise of answers tantalizing yet shadowed with new danger. The game was far from over, but the board had shifted irrevocably. As Hale's men began to stir, Claire prepared herself for the next move, knowing this confrontation was but the opening salvo in a war that would decide not just her sister's fate, but the soul of the rehab itself. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars, indifferent witnesses to the storm unfolding within the walls of silk and secrets. And Claire was ready to tear through every veil until the truth was laid bare. The room's sterile luxury pressed in on Claire as she faced Hale, the man whose smile could freeze blood. His voice, recorded and now echoing through the speakers, revealed the sick underbelly of this place, a place that promised healing but dealt in broken souls and calculated control. She had planned this moment meticulously, gathering every fragment of evidence, every whispered secret, every stolen file. Even Evelyn's menacing presence, once an impenetrable barrier, now seemed vulnerable against the weight of truth. Claire's mind raced, piecing together the implications of Hale's words. The rehab's pristine surface was a lie, a mask hiding a monstrous core, and Sophie was caught in its grasp. Her fingers tightened around the recorder as Hale's fury boiled over. Yet, in that rage, Claire glimpsed a crack, a weakness she could exploit. Marcus Lyle's reaction confirmed it. The power players here were not invincible. Their empire's foundations were cracking. Claire knew the risks. She had played a dangerous game to get here, risking exposure, betrayal, and her own sanity. But now, standing in this glass prison with Hale and his enforcers, she felt the surge of defiance that had driven her from the start. This was the reckoning, the final game, and Claire intended to win. As the recording ended, a heavy silence descended. Hale's eyes burned with cold fire, but Claire held her ground. "Your empire is built on lies and fear," she said, voice steady. "It ends now." Evelyn stepped forward, tension radiating from her like a coiled spring. But before she could act, the conference room doors slid open, a subtle signal from an unexpected quarter. Allies Claire hadn't expected, patients and staff who had long suffered in silence, now ready to challenge the regime. The power balance shifted palpably. Hale's control, once absolute, now felt fragile. Claire glanced toward the doorway, hope flickering. This was more than just a personal battle. It was a fight for freedom, and the final move was hers. The city's night air was cool as Claire left the conference room, the weight of the confrontation settling around her like a cloak. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and deception, but she carried with her the truth, a weapon sharper than any blade. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the rehab's silk-draped halls, Sophia waited. Claire's resolve hardened. The final game had begun. The stakes were life and death, and she would not lose. Marcus Vale's private office, a place she had only glimpsed from afar until now. The room was a study in cold elegance. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and the faint scent of cigar smoke lingered in the air, mingling with the subtle aroma of aged leather. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a panoramic view of the city, a sea of twinkling lights beneath a velvet night sky. But the beauty outside felt like a cruel contrast to the storm raging within. Dr. Vale sat behind the massive mahogany desk, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, his gaze sharp and unyielding. The man exuded a kind of ruthless calm, the kind that unnerved even the most composed. "You've been quite the puzzle, Claire," he began, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic, pretending to be someone you're not, digging where you shouldn't. Claire met his eyes, steady despite the flood of emotions threatening to betray her. "Where is she?" she demanded. "My sister, Alina." A shadow flickered across Vale's face, replaced quickly by a thin smile. "Alina, she's part of a far bigger game than you understand. This place isn't just a sanctuary, it's a chessboard, and your sister, she's a piece we hold close." Claire's breath caught. So many nights of searching, so many whispered rumors, and now the truth was laid bare. Alina had been here all along, hidden not for her recovery, but as leverage. Why? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "Power," Vale said simply. "Control." The door clicked softly behind her. Claire turned to see Damien step in, his presence commanding attention even in this charged atmosphere. His face was unreadable, but his eyes flickered with something like respect, or was it calculation? "You want answers," Damien said, voice low, "but answers come at a price." Claire weighed her options. She needed allies, even if they came from the shadows. Later, in the rehab's underground lounge, the air thick with smoke and whispered secrets, Claire and Damien sat opposite each other, the tension palpable. "Dr. Vale's empire is built on silence and fear," Damien confided. "If we expose him, the whole structure collapses. But he's watching, always watching." Claire nodded, the weight of the alliance settling on her shoulders. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Under cover of darkness, Claire moved through the sterile service corridors, each step echoing against the cold white walls. The distant hum of the facility was a constant reminder of the surveillance she had to outwit. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound a potential alarm. Finally, she reached the door to a small room, locked, guarded, but no match for the information Damien had provided. Her heart pounded as she peered through the frosted glass. There, illuminated by the soft blue glow of the city lights, was Alina, fragile yet fiercely alive, her eyes locked with Claire's through the barrier. A silent exchange passed between them, hope, fear, promises unspoken. Claire knew the path ahead was treacherous. The truths uncovered tonight were only the beginning. Betrayals lurked in every corner, and the lines between friend and foe blurred into shadows beneath the silk. But one thing was certain: she would not stop until Alina was free, no matter the cost. And as the night deepened, so did the game one, where the stakes were life, death, and the fragile hope that justice could still be claimed in a world built on lies. Behind the thick velvet curtain, the faint scuffle of raised voices and crashing furniture played out like a rehearsed symphony, a necessary ruse in the otherwise suffocating silence of the rehab's marble corridors. She exhaled slowly, forcing herself to stay calm as the seconds crawled toward the appointed moment. The plan had been months in the making, each step choreographed with painstaking precision. Victor had supplied the insider knowledge, secret passages, blind spots in surveillance, and the timing of security patrols. Celine, the enigmatic staff member whose allegiance remained carefully veiled, had provided access codes and subtle diversions, tipping off Claire to changes in shift patterns and locked areas. Now it all came down to this. The staged fight erupted with sudden ferocity, patients shouting and shoving, the clatter of overturned furniture echoing through the halls. Dr. Langston's voice crackled over the intercom, cold and authoritative. Security breach in Sector C lockdown initiated. Claire slipped from her hiding place, moving swiftly but silently. Mara was waiting in the dim light of the service corridor, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Her frail hand found Claire's, gripping tightly as they melted into the shadows, the sting of cold steel doors brushing past them like ghostly sentinels. Every step was a gamble. The labyrinthine corridors twisted and turned, a maze designed to confound and contain. Claire's mind raced, recalibrating routes as guards thundered nearby, their boots striking the polished floors with ominous urgency. Victor flanked them, his scarred face a mask of grim determination. At a junction, they paused, breath held, hearts pounding in sync with the distant alarms. Claire peered around the corner just in time to see a squad of security personnel rush past, diverted by a fire alarm Celine had triggered remotely. It was their narrow window. They sprinted, the cold night air growing closer with every desperate step. As they burst through the final exit, the crisp breeze bit at Claire's skin, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere they left behind. She dared a glance back. The rehab's glowing windows stood like watchful eyes in the darkness, a beacon of the twisted world they had just escaped. But freedom was bittersweet. The alarms blared louder now, a siren call that meant their escape was known. The battle was far from over. Claire's mind flickered with what lay ahead: exposure, retaliation, and the fragile hope that the truth they carried would shatter the silk-smooth lies once and for all. For now, though they ran, the night swallowed their footprints, the controlled chaos of the rehab replaced by the raw, uncertain wilderness beyond. And in that moment, Claire felt the heavy weight of the journey ahead. The thin line between salvation and destruction stretching out before them, dark and endless. There, seated quietly, was Isabel, her sister, frail yet unmistakably alive. The sterile walls seemed to close in, the silence between them heavy with years of absence and unspoken fears. Their eyes met, a tremor passing through the space as memories surged. Childhood laughter, broken promises, and the shadowed path that led Isabel here. Isabel's voice was a fragile thread when she finally spoke, carrying the weight of confinement and survival. She painted a harrowing portrait of days spent under the cold gaze of the rehab staff, where kindness was a currency rarely spent and control was exerted with surgical precision. "They want to break you," she whispered, "but you have to hold on to the pieces of yourself they can't reach." Claire listened, her resolve hardening. Every detail Isabel shared illuminated the dark corners of the rehab's operation, the manipulations, the betrayals, the silent wars fought behind silken curtains. As they talked, the bond between them flickered back to life, fragile but unyielding. Yet beneath the relief, a shadow loomed. Dr. Evelyn Cross, the architect of their torment, watched from afar. Her presence a chilling reminder that freedom was not guaranteed. Later, in a quiet corridor, Claire confronted Evelyn. The air was thick with tension as words, sharp and measured, were exchanged. Evelyn's cold composure masked the threat beneath. Claire's defiance was a beacon in the oppressive gloom. This confrontation cracked the facade of control, exposing fissures that could be exploited, but only if the sisters remained united. Returning to the therapy room, Claire and Isabel shared a rare moment of tenderness. Beneath the glitter of chandeliers and the watchful eyes of the facility, they allowed themselves to be sisters, again vulnerable, hopeful, and fiercely determined. But the stakes had never been higher. Their reunion was a spark in the dark, a fragile light against the engulfing shadows. As the chapter closes, Claire's mind races with plans and risks. The path ahead is fraught with danger, but with Isabel by her side, the fight for freedom has new meaning. In this world where power games rage beneath a silk veneer, blood ties may be the strongest bond of all. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a constant reminder of the clinical coldness she had escaped, yet was now trapped within another kind of confinement. Across the room, Emma lay pale and fragile on the hospital bed, her eyes closed, but lashes fluttering like the wings of a wounded bird. It had been hours since they had been reunited, oars filled with an agonizing mix of relief and dread. Their reunion had been nothing like Claire imagined. Instead of tears and laughter, there was a cautious tenderness, a hesitance born from years of separation and the invisible scars carved by the rehab's merciless grip. Emma's fingers trembled as Claire reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her sister's forehead. The touch was electric but fragile, as though either might pull away at any moment. "I thought I'd lost you," Claire whispered, her voice cracking. Emma's eyes opened slowly, haunted and glassy, yet something flickered deep within them, flicker of hope. "You found me," she replied, voice barely audible but steady. Outside the hospital walls, the world was shifting. Detective Harper paced the cramped office where he'd been working tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. The walls were plastered with photos, documents, and maps each, a thread in the tapestry of corruption and cruelty that defined the rehab. "They thought they could bury it all," Harper said, voice low and grim as Claire entered. "But they underestimated you." Claire nodded, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Emma's story is just the beginning. There are others victims who still don't have a voice. Harper spread out a thick folder, revealing damning evidence, forged documents, covert recordings, financial trails leading to powerful figures. The depth of the rehab's rot was staggering. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit apartment, miles away, Dr. Lillian Cross sat across from Claire, the flickering candle casting shadows that danced nervously on the peeling wallpaper. Dr. Cross's hands trembled as she recounted the horrors hidden beneath the rehab's luxurious veneer, the psychological manipulations, the silenced screams, the lives broken for profit. I wanted to speak out, Lillian confessed, eyes darting to the door as if expecting to be caught. But the fear, it's suffocating. They control everything. Claire reached across the table, gripping Lillian's hand firmly. We'll expose them, together. The night deepened, and Claire found herself alone again, staring through a rain-streaked window at the blurred city lights. Thunder rumbled softly, echoing the turmoil within her. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and pain, but beneath it all, a fierce determination burned. She would not let her sister's suffering be in vain. As the first drops of rain slid down the glass, Claire whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." The struggle to heal and to fight would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But in the shadow of their trauma, a fragile new bond was forming, one that might just be strong enough to shatter the darkness that had held them captive for so long. Claire's days blurred into a relentless cycle of hospital visits, meetings with Detective Harper, and covert conversations with Dr. Cross. Each step uncovered new layers of deception, but also new dangers. The rehab's influence reached far beyond its gilded walls, and those who sought to protect its secrets were ruthless. Emma's recovery was slow and painful. Nightmares haunted her sleep, and moments of silence were filled with unspoken fears. Yet, in the quiet moments between, the sisters found solace in shared memories and tentative plans for the future. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through hospital blinds, Emma clasped Claire's hand tightly. "What happens now?" Claire took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "We fight. For you, for me, for everyone they've hurt." The road ahead promised no easy victories, but for the first time in a long while, hope felt tangibly fragile thread weaving through the darkness, pulling them toward a dawn yet to come. Late one evening, as the city slept under a blanket of rain, Claire sat alone in her cramped apartment. The weight of the day's revelations pressed heavily on her chest. Her fingers trembled as she opened a worn journal, the pages filled with notes, names, and fragments of conversations. Her phone buzzed a message from Detective Harper, "New lead. Meet at 10. Claire's eyes narrowed with resolve. The fight was far from over, but no matter the cost, she would see it through. Because some truths demanded to be heard, even if the world tried to silence them. And in the shadows of the night, beneath the quiet hum of the city, Claire whispered a promise to herself and to Emma: "We'll bring the truth to light, no matter what it takes." The aftermath of their escape was not just a reckoning with the external forces arrayed against them, but an internal battle with their own fears, pain, and fragile hopes. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, Claire and Emma braced themselves for the long journey of healing and justice, journey marked by scars, secrets, and the unbreakable bond of sisterhood. And as the first light touched their faces, Claire knew one thing with certainty: this was not the end. Claire sat across from Sophie, the air between them thick with tentative hope and unspoken fears. It was the first time they had dared to meet outside the suffocating walls of the rehab center, and the very act felt like a fragile victory. Sophie's fingers trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a warm cup of tea, her eyes flickering with a mix of exhaustion and relief. Claire studied her sister's face, noting the faint lines etched by sleepless nights and lingering trauma, but also the glimmer of strength that had survived the darkest days. "It's strange," Sophie whispered, voice barely above the cafe's ambient murmur, "to be here, like this, after everything." Claire reached across the table, her hand covering Sophie's. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said softly, "but we're moving forward, step by step." Outside, the city stirred to life, indifferent to the fragile peace the sisters shared. Their conversation wove between memories of the past and cautious plans for the future. The luxury rehab had been a gilded cage, hiding horrors beneath its silk-smooth facade. Now, free but vulnerable, they faced a new challenge, reclaiming their identities and exposing the sinister forces that had held them captive. Later that afternoon, Claire met with Detective Ramirez in a small, cluttered office that smelled of stale coffee and old paper. The detective's grizzled face betrayed years of weariness, but his eyes held a steely resolve that matched Claire's own. "The evidence you've brought is substantial," Ramirez said, spreading out files and photographs on the desk. "But the rehab's backers have deep pockets and influential allies. It won't be easy to bring them down." Claire nodded, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "I'm prepared for that, whatever it takes." The detective's voice softened. "And Sophie, how is she holding up?" "She's stronger than she lets on," Claire replied. "But the nightmares, they don't stop." As night fell, Sophie awoke, gasping, the remnants of a nightmare clinging to her like a shroud. The room was dark except for the faint glow of city lights filtering through the curtains. Claire was there instantly, her hand warm and steady on Sophie's arm. "It's okay," Claire whispered, soothing. "You're safe now." The bond between them, forged in fire and pain, was their shield against the lingering darkness. But even as they sought solace in each other, the shadows of their past loomed large. In the weeks that followed, Claire and Sophie settled into a modest apartment, their sanctuary from the chaos they'd escaped. Yet freedom was complicated, layered with legal battles, media scrutiny, and the ever-present threat of retribution. Claire spent long hours coordinating with Ramirez, piecing together the complex web of corruption that had ensnared so many. One crisp evening, Claire stepped outside, the cold wind biting at her skin. She inhaled deeply, the sharp air clearing her mind. The city stretched out before her, a sprawling maze of light and shadow. Her fight was far from over. But with Sophie by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. Through whispered conversations, quiet tears, and unyielding determination, the sisters began to rebuild. The scars remained, but so did their will to survive. In a world where power games never truly ended, Claire understood that new beginnings were just another battlefield, and she was prepared to fight. Malkovich awaited. The late morning sun filtered through the towering windows, casting stark patterns of light and shadow across the polished mahogany table. She felt every muscle tighten, her breath steady despite the storm raging inside her. Years of deception, danger, and desperation had led to this moment. Her sister Elise was close now, but so were the consequences of unearthing the dark secrets buried beneath the silk-smooth facade of this gilded cage. Dr. Malkovich rose as she entered, his cold gaze locking onto hers with a predator's precision. "Claire," he said smoothly, voice laced with false warmth. "I was wondering when you'd come to see me." She didn't flinch. "You know why I'm here. The truth about this place, about my sister." A faint smile curled his lips. "Truth is a slippery thing, isn't it? Here, it's wrapped in layers, power, profit, and control." Claire stepped forward, pulling a slim tablet from her coat pocket. "I have everything. Surveillance footage, financial records, testimonies. The world will know what you've done." For a moment, Malkovich's composed mask faltered, a flicker of something darker flashing in his eyes. "You think you can bring down an empire built on secrets and silence?" Before she could answer, the room's heavy door burst open. Jared slipped inside, nodding toward Claire with a grim expression. "They're on their way. Authorities have been tipped off." Claire's heart pounded. The long game was finally reaching its climax. "Where's Elise?" she demanded. Malkovich's eyes narrowed. "She's fragile. A pawn in a game she barely understands." "Not anymore," Claire whispered, her voice steel. She moved quickly, guided by Jared through labyrinthine corridors humming with the distant wail of alarms. At last, they found Elise, pale and trembling, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "Claire," Elise breathed, clutching her sister's hand. "I was so afraid you'd never come." Tears blurred Claire's vision, but she forced herself to focus. "I'm here now. We're getting out." The building shuddered as security forces descended, the facade of control crumbling. In the conference room, the projected footage of the rehab's darkest abuses played out, exposing the cruelty hidden beneath luxury. Gasps and curses echoed as the elite residents realized their empire was unraveling. Outside, rain poured down, washing away the sins cloaked in silk. Claire stood at the entrance, watching the storm with a bittersweet resolve. Justice was coming, but at a cost she would carry forever. She turned to Elise, squeezing her hand. "We're free, but the fight isn't over. Not yet." Darkness and light mingled in the night, but Claire had learned one thing: sometimes, to kill the monster gently, you had to become the storm. The final game had been played, but the shadows of power would never fully fade, and Claire was ready to face whatever came next.